Welcome to Building Fortunes Radio. Make sure you check us out at buildingfortunesradio.com. Along with our marketing partners, we're here to help our PM Marketing Network Leads customers build their businesses and make the world a better place. At Building Fortunes, we know how much your business means to you and the people important to you. So spread the word, tell a friend, join our newsletter, and go make a difference in your world. Now on to our show with your host, Peter Mingils.
Hello, everyone. Peter Mingils here. It's Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're listening in, today is December 11th, so we're almost done with 2015. If you're listening in and you're alive, thanks for being here on Building Fortunes Radio. If you are listening in and you're still alive, but you caught us on one of our replays, you probably found this again on buildingfortunesradio.com. So buildingfortunesradio.com. The reason why we call it Building Fortunes Radio is because my background was in direct sales and direct sales management. I took a look at home-based business. I became an evangelist for the entrepreneur that wants to work from home. Many of the things that people do are MLM, but there's lots of ways to be able to make some money working from home. So I am definitely a home-based business evangelist relative to network marketing companies, affiliate programs, all that sort of stuff. But I really specialized in the MLM field and still do. We run a company called PM Marketing. We generate leads. I run a phone room. We have an autoresponder. We do all the different things to be able to help people effectively build their business. Here's the unfortunate thing. I grew up in an industry that did it the right way. That was unfortunate when I came into network marketing. I grew up in the direct sales arena where a lot of the stuff that happens here, you would have been laughed out of my training room by my first-year trainees. Like, they would be, are you kidding me? He said that? What an idiot. What a fool. What a whatever. And unfortunately, in the MLM industry, they give them microphones and big checks. So people listen sometimes. So the reason why we do Building Fortunes Radio is I got very frustrated with good, hardworking people being deceived, either intentionally or by accident or however it happened, because they didn't understand the way the business worked. So with that, we host lots of radio shows. So if you listen to buildingfortunesradio.com, that's where we put them, you'll be able to hear things like the MLM After Hours show. You'll be able to hear people that are singing the praises of whatever it is that they might be doing, and some of them are doing it really the right way. And then we're also going to hear from the other side some of the critical things, some of the things that are really worth speaking to that some people may say might be negative, but I say, no, this is the way the business is. It's really, and it's alive. So several months ago, I was looking to do something, and I said, I've been reading Rogier Van Vlissingen's articles on a website called Seeking Alpha. And it was for a while, and as I was reading through Rogier Van Vlissingen's articles on seekingalpha.com, I said, this guy's smart. He's got some wits about him. Like, I could hang with his conversations. He's got a complex brain. And then I would see other people writing some articles, and I said, I wonder how many people ever reach out to him and give him a chance to actually not only type out his thoughts and his feelings and his experiences and his research, that's the most important thing, but also get a chance to hear him out, because some people might say this might be critical. So I said, no, I'm going to reach out to him, and I had a nice conversation. And then he said, well, I'm going to bring a gentleman named eRobert Smith along with me. And I said, well, that's good. I mean, I'm sure he's a good guy, so let's bring him in. We'll kind of have this little dialogue. And from there, we've expanded to having this radio show we do as many times on a Friday at 5 p.m. for about an hour on Building Fortunes Radio, and we talk about the different things that are happening. Now, we got lucky. The first radio show we did just happened to be the week that the FTC was going after VEMA. So when I say we got lucky for content for the radio show, for VEMA it wasn't a good thing. For the FTC, they're going to stay employed. For the people that were in VEMA, their lives were turned upside down. And I called it MLM's 9/11. So it was the day that the world changed. So the world is changing continuously, and the VEMA part is just one of those components as well. And we've had lots of material. And today, I am super excited because Roger's going to be able to share a little bit of experiences on what's been happening recently with some stuff that also might be industry changing. So I'm excited to hear about Roger. But the first thing I want to do is I want to introduce today's three guests. We have Rogier Van Vlissingen, we have eRobert Smith, and then we have David, Your Majesty, Sir, Ritchie. So Dave, rather, Your Majesty, Sir, Ritchie. And I just threw that in because I messed up his first name. He likes to be called Dave. So anyways, let's go with Roger first. You could just introduce yourself, and then we'll do the other two introductions, and then we'll come over to your stories, Roger. So Roger, over to you.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful time having these conversations, and I'll throw out another little tidbit. In the early 90s, I was involved for a short while in the phone card industry, which started with, among other things, a couple of MLMs. One of them was a company called Amerivox. And after a while, I figured out pretty quickly, within probably a half a year, figured out that really this business was not well served with MLM, and I made up my mind that I was going to get out of that company. And then a distant relative of mine became a partner in the company. And I had a conversation with him at one point in time, and I suspect that he invested some major money in the business. I said to him then, given what I thought I knew about the company, that I'm sorry, I'm just about to get out of here, and I think that probably anything you invested you're going to lose, which went over like a lead balloon, except that 6 months later it became a fact. And that was another tidbit of my own personal MLM experience. Fortunately, it wasn't me who lost the money, but it certainly was a memorable effect of a very, very badly thought-out business that just was not designed to work. The people who founded this ran off with the money, and the thing was left in a shambles. So that's it for today.
There we go. We're going to bring you back, and you're going to tell us a little bit about the stuff that happened this week. And then we have eRobert Smith. So eRobert Smith is a gentleman who is also a contributing author to the website that I have great levels of respect for, seekingalpha.com, and he's written a book called Downline. You can find it on Amazon if you look for it, and his pen name is eRobert Smith. So, eRobert, over to you.
Yeah, good to be on the call again. The holidays are coming up, and so there's not a lot of activity except what Roger has been a part of, and so I'm looking forward to hearing about that. In terms of my own background, just for those who are listening in, I was what they called a heavy hitter, recruiter, promoter in MLM for a number of years, and I did well in it, if you want to call it well. I made a lot of money doing it for a season, but couldn't reconcile with once I really understood the way the business was actually operating as opposed to the theory. It became really difficult for me to continue to do it. So I did get out eventually. And so at some point I just felt like that the story needed to be told about what was really going on. And so I authored a book, a novel actually, because I wanted to, because that's what I do. And the rest is history. People are slowly catching up to the realities of the business. We've seen, as you mentioned, we've got a case with VEMA, which is very, very important in terms of the future of the industry. And, of course, we've got the active ongoing investigation of Herbalife. And we're just involved in an industry that has a troubled history, and for very good reasons. And so I'm just glad to be on the call and to talk about what's going on,
Excellent. Okay, good. And then we have Dave Ritchie. So Dave, we've had Dave on, and he's talked about different things from time to time. And by the way, you can listen to any one of the previous radio shows on the Building Fortunes segment or the MLM After Hours segment of buildingfortunesradio.com. But Dave has a really great, it's a horrible story. But the lessons that people can learn from it, I think, worth noting, and some of them are probably going to be very applicable to the story that Roger's going to be telling us a little bit later on. So, David, you want to tell us a little bit about you and any websites or anything else?
Thank you, Peter. I'm happy to be on your show as well and really appreciate the public service you're providing. I come at I come to this from a little different place than Robert did, actually worlds apart from where eRobert came from. My experience was motivated by love, and I watched my loved one lose probably $250,000 to the fraud in the multi-level marketing industry, and also saw her lose her son indirectly as a result of her involvement. So I actually got out of my peripheral involvement with the industry in early 2012 after doing about 6 months of research trying to justify staying in. And much like happened to eRobert, my conscience just wouldn't permit me to continue. And as a matter of fact, I could not tolerate being in the same house where recruiting activities were taking place. So after I left, I continued my research and have come up with some new ideas and new theories that hadn't been addressed before. And fortunately for all of us, Seeking Alpha is very willing to publish well-done research, and I've been fortunate to have had them publish a piece of my work as well. And I'll be submitting another piece this week for publication.
So there's lessons to be learned by all the gentlemen here. And here, I just said a little bit earlier, I'm an evangelist for a home-based business. I believe in MLM, and I have, 3 people that are going to sit here and or be on the phone with us, and we're going to be openly discussing some of the challenges. There are challenges in the MLM world, without a doubt. I still think in the delusional or partially delusional sense, maybe somebody could do it the right way. Yes, it could be done the right way, and I have customers that are doing it the right way. But unfortunately, there's too few, it seems, of people that are really having their voice when they're doing it the right way, and too many of people that are doing it the wrong way. And we're going to hear another example from Roger as we get started. So, Roger, can you share with us what you've been personally involved with, and if you want to give us the background for those people that might be unfamiliar with anything that we might be referencing, give us a little bit of a backdrop before you kind of
Sure.
tell us what happened.
Sure.
So this way we can position it the right way, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So the background, I guess, is besides my own increasing involvement in the discussions around Herbalife in the last 3 years, that at a certain point, some of the local politicians in my district in the Bronx were getting interested, and one of the first ones was Annabelle Palma, who is the councilwoman in my district, and she actually filed a complaint with the Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, and got the thing on the agenda pretty much for her particular area. And I got into conversation with her when I found out that she had an interest, and I learned that she really very much firsthand with people in our community helped them to understand that they were getting absolutely ripped off like crazy, and she was really concerned about it. And so then it took a little while, but just I think 2 months ago, New York Senator Jeff Klein and Letitia James, who is the public advocate for New York City, filed this legislative proposal that was targeted very clearly at the phenomenon of the Herbalife Nutrition Clubs. And, of course, I have been in contact with them and giving them feedback on the development of their proposal. And at some point in time, they wanted to do a public roundtable discussion. And it so turns out that my local community board, which is the largest in the Bronx, also has the most Herbalife nutrition clubs of any district in New York City. So it was an appropriate place for Annabelle Palma and Senator Jeff Klein and Assemblyman Louis Sepulveda to be hosting this roundtable discussion, and the press came out, local television, and I think 2 stations were there, and some other press, and people from the community, including some people that lost significant money in Herbalife. And one of them was not much different from the story we just heard about Dave, except for the relative magnitude, but it was a Spanish gentleman who basically had his wife go into Herbalife, and for a while he supported her, but by the time her losses added up to about $50,000, he basically told her, listen, it's either me or it's Herbalife, and you got to make a choice. Well, she chose Herbalife. And that is the kind of stuff that's really showing us how insane this stuff can get if people are wrapped up in these misrepresentations and they just keep losing money after money after money, and very often, unfortunately, money that they don't have, which is really what makes this extra sad. And in some of my comments in the show, I was able to point that out, that if you look at Madoff, he basically ripped off money from people who had it in the bank to invest, and yes, he stole their money, and that's bad, and therefore he is in jail. But in a lot of MLM, what happens is basically people rip off money on an installment program from people who don't have it to spend and who go in hock, and sometimes it is with credit cards, other times it is with friends and family who loan them money. One lady that also spoke in this roundtable discussion had gone partners with 3 other people and started a Herbalife Nutrition Center, and they all lost money on that from beginning to end, on and on and on. So again, it's often hardworking people that don't have the money in the bank to invest, but just on the installment program buy in deeper and deeper and deeper until it's too late, and they realize that they may have wasted most of their life savings and oftentimes money they didn't have, so they end up in hock after it's all over.
Right. So to kind of to give people a little bit more of a backdrop, Herbalife's a publicly traded multi-billion-dollar company. Big here in the United States, but much bigger abroad. In the mid-2000s, their sales were flat. They brought over a gentleman named Michael Johnson as a CEO who had previous experience of building organizations over at Disney and was really good at international expansion. And then all of a sudden this thing in Mexico happened with a new way of moving inventory called a nutrition club. So it was a club, not necessarily a retail store. And it really kind of hit. And it hit big time in the Latino market, obviously, because most of Mexico is Spanish-speaking. And then it kind of weaned its way into the United States, and then all of a sudden, in places like where Roger is, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, all that sort of stuff, they're not on every street corner, but there's a lot of them out there. And they're not retail stores, so they're kind of covered up. Now, you can just imagine the lower income areas of the Hispanic markets. Think of the Bronx in certain areas. Now, there's certain sections of Bronx that are beautiful, of course, but usually it's the lower income areas where people have come over maybe from foreign countries. English is probably a second language, and this is where the predatory practices seems to start. Now, every single one of us on the phone, I'm sure I'm going to throw us all under the bus. We all understand that businesses that start up can fail. Most of them do. We realize they're undercapitalized, they're under whatever. Most businesses won't make it more than 5 years, so we already understand that. The only difference is that everybody who starts a business probably has been told that one way or another. The deception, if you will, is along the line of why somebody might open up a nutrition club and then ultimately fail. So it's not that businesses failed. Roger, I don't think you'd have a problem if they opened up a business and it failed. I think you'd have a problem with if they opened up a business under the pretense that they were promised or alluded to the idea that they were going to become rich and famous, like the guy with the microphone at the top of the stage who's living the lifestyle of the rich and famous, that says things like, this is easy, everybody can do it, and you're going to become rich, and you'll do this, and hock your way into whatever, or whatever they might be saying, or push to make sure you keep your rank, otherwise you'll lose your club. All of those types of practices are the ones that are somewhat questionable. So I'll let you clean up whatever I might have said or added to it, Roger.
No, I think that's exactly it. The point is not that, everybody has a right to fail, so to speak, but if it is induced by deception, that's where the problem comes in, and that is the problem of MLM. That's the core problem. Once again, there's nothing wrong with failure, and some of us learn our best lessons from failing. But in MLM, it's a very purposive thing to deceive people into going into these deals over their heads, and then when it's all over, then everybody pleads the fifth, and that is just not a way that is acceptable in society. And hopefully with actions like now this thing by local politicians, and I think it's immaterial how successful this particular action even is, but the fact is it serves notice to the federal government also, from the standpoint that clearly if the feds don't take care of business, then the states will at the local level, and that hopefully should make the federal government listen up and pay attention that they really dropped the ball in the last 40 years, and it's time to change. And the VIMA process is an indication of how things can change.
Right. So the story about Herbalife is, although they've been under investigation lots of times before, it really heated up when Bill Ackman, a billionaire hedge fund person, about 3 years ago, almost to the day, decided that he was going to take a short bet on Herbalife stock and was hoping that the stock would go down to zero. The company would be exposed as a pyramid company. It would go out of business. He would cash out $1 billion. $1 billion, like billion with a B. And then what happened was other people took the other side of the position, people like Carl Icahn, George Soros, and a whole bunch of other people, probably not that Herbalife was such a great deal, but probably more that they just really didn't like Bill Ackman. It was a way to get rid of this punk because he kind of pissed off Carl Icahn and a lot of other people as well, so they jumped on the other side of the stock. And then unfortunately, Herbalife's the poor company that got stuck in the middle. And the company that got stuck in the middle found that Bill Ackman's going to do a lot of research on why Herbalife is a pyramid, should be closed down, and then throw all that paperwork at the government to say, well, you're not doing the job. Here's the evidence. Go look at this. And throwing enough stuff at it where they had to start to take a look at it. And we've heard that everybody's under investigation. We know the government moves really slowly. They have to be really sure that they're doing everything first before they just make some false claims. So you got all the reason why the government goes really slow. In this example, they haven't broken down the doors like they've done in VIMA and just like crashed the whole thing and, all that sort of stuff. So Herbalife is really like a slow boil. And it's a slow boil, and while this thing is a slow boil, if there are these challenges, they're continuing to happen. And what you've done, Roger, with that organization, or what you kind of shared with us about that organization, is the states are getting kind of tired of, well, if you're not going to do it, Mr. Federal Government, we're going to do it for you. So what are they trying to do? What is it that's, when they're successful at what they do, what is it that will be accomplished?
Well, the proposal boils down to imposing a number of regulations that would make something a la the Nutrition Club impossible, and in the process to throw up a number of roadblocks for anything like an MLM. And the gist of it is that, like I say, there would be regulatory requirements such as right now the way the proposal is drafted, which I don't think is necessarily final, but there's a lot of things where advertising materials and disclosures of any kind all need to be vetted by the state attorney general before they can be used, and they need to be honest and factual, and that is a very interesting approach. And the other thing is that, a little quirk is that it tries to limit itself to health-related products and thereby ignores another segment of MLM. So I don't know how good of an idea that is per se, but basically, of course, the health-related products are a large part of MLM. And something like a nutrition club would basically be impossible the moment you pass this type of legislation as it's now being drafted. So that's it. And it would basically have to be a viable sales business with protections a little bit similar to what you see in franchise. So it would really become like a mini franchise.
Right. So I'm going to throw in my little editorial. If you go and you do some YouTube videos, or you go on the Herbalife site and you start watching the stuff about the Nutrition Club, you'll see people running around in exercise uniforms, and you'll see people say that, you've changed my life and I've lost weight and I love the culture and all that sort of stuff. And that's all the positive stuff. And there's no doubt in my mind that if I were to ask all of us, if I were to say, listen, it's worth your while, I'm going to suspend your life and everything else that you're doing, could you make a nutrition club work? I know, now, again, suspend your life, like whether it's an option for you or not. We just said, listen, we just need to prove this point. We'll give you your life back when you're done. Could you make a nutrition club work? Well, it's a cultural event and it's fun and people are losing weight and educating and advancing far beyond and whatever, and it feels like a family and it'll be right. We all can say absolutely positive, at least I could say, absolutely positively it could work that. If it, again, I had to put in that I have to suspend my life because I'm kind of busy doing other things, if you know what I mean. So it's not necessarily the concept of having this. The biggest challenge, I think, and Roger, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think, again, the biggest challenge is how do they get started? How do they pitch on this? And are we preying on people that we shouldn't be preying, when I say we, that they shouldn't be preying on because of false hope or incapable of getting it done, or just because you want to doesn't mean that maybe that you should, and they're probably also violating a whole bunch of other things as well. So tell us your stance on the concept of nutrition clubs philosophically, and then in reality the way it's being practiced by what this company is allowing to happen.
Yeah, it is very hard to talk about, quote-unquote, the concept philosophically, because like you suggested before, the clubs are such that they cannot even show to the outside world what they are. So it's like a speakeasy for health products. That's what it is. And it's all done because they know at some level that what they're doing there can't stand the light of day. That's as simple as it is. So that part of it is unworkable. Of course, any type of a mutually supportive system where people help each other with a health issue like losing weight or whatever it is, that would be fine if it's done openly and honestly and whatever. But in this context, it's always done surreptitiously and with a purpose of deceiving the public into thinking that it's one thing when it's really something else. And it really, really, really is about the underlying pyramid scheme and driving people to want to buy more and more and more product and convince other people to buy more and more and more product and keep that chain going ad infinitum. And the Nutrition Club is nothing else but a front to make it look like there's a real business that is only sucking people in deeper. And that's the stories we heard. And I'm just looking at the press release while I'm talking. And, the two Bronx residents are mentioned there by name, Francisco Payano, who lost $50,000, and Maria David, who lost like $15,000. And that lady was the one who was partners with three other people. And Payano was the guy who basically ended up with his wife divorcing him because she chose Herbalife over her husband. And there you go. And I'll quote myself here. This proposal by Senator Jeff Klein and public advocate Letitia James is a breath of fresh air coming on top of an apparent new sense of urgency at the FTC, as shown in the recent VIMA case. We should all remember that Madoff stole from the wealthy, but pyramid schemes steal from those who don't have the money to start with, and it needs to change. The deceptive health claims are par for the course of these scams. That was me, Chairman of Community Board number 9.
Well, as far as the clubs themselves, to really put it in perspective, even theoretically from Herbalife's point of view, or for the people that are getting involved in these clubs, it's all about yet another way of driving recruitment. These clubs are essentially points of contact with the public, and in the midst of that contact, people coming in and getting a free shake or whatever product that they may get. There's nothing free about it. These products are being bought by people associated with the club who are hoping that the people that they're bringing in will be drawn to the business and they can recruit them. So it's really about recruitment. The underlying situation is the same situation that has been with multi-level marketing from its inception, and that is it is recruitment driven. So the clubs are nothing more than another way to recruit others, and as Roger has explained, it's deceptive, and so shutting down Nutrition Club is not the answer. It is in this particular instance, but the answer is exposing this business as being something other than trying to retail products to end consumers. That's just not the case. And what we have here in terms of history and why we're seeing these events in the case of the FTC getting more aggressive in recent years is simply a coming of age, if you will. It's an industry whose time has come, because it's a fascinating study, really. It's just from an academic point of view. To study the development and the way MLM works is just from an academic point is fascinating. I mean, it's amazing, and it's really not apparent at the surface. You have to have some experience in it, and have to think it through in order to really understand how this business bilks people out of the money that it does. But even more perplexing is why people continue to throw money at it. And some of that has to do, of course, with the deception, but also there is another component to this business, and it really is about a gamble. There really is a gambling component to this business, and some of the same things that cause gamblers to go broke goes on in multi-level marketing. They really think the next time that wheel turns, that ball is gonna wind up on my number, and it doesn't. And so after all these years, and it's been a number of years, we're finally seeing what we're seeing now, and that is the FTC and the public at large. And by the way, through this show even, I think hopefully people that are listening to this show will start recognizing and getting this information and realizing the deception that is involved, and hopefully stop pursuing these companies that are not doing it right, and start thinking about doing the right thing. trying to actually sell a product.
Yeah, exactly. So let me kind of walk people through that have never really been through a nutrition club before, what it might be like. So I think as you take this little virtual tour that we're going to give you, the more you go into it, you'll say, really? Like, that's the way it works? Like, this just doesn't feel right. So here we go. So Roger, I don't know how much you know, so let's walk through this little process. So we're on a street in the Bronx, and we're going to kind of make a left-hand turn into a nutrition club. What we see is a building, like a storefront, and it's kind of covered up. And it might be in that beautiful Herbalife green color. And we say, I wonder when the store is open. Well, first of all, what kind of a store is this? It doesn't identify Herbalife at all. It's kind of covered up. Almost like a closed store, looks like, but just covered with whatever. And we say, Roger, when are the store hours? And we'd look on the door, and there'd be no hours. So wait, what is it? This is a club. Oh, it's a club. Okay, so let's go inside this club. All right, so there's people having fun and all that sort of stuff, and then eventually I get this shake, and I say, okay, where do I pay for this? And Roger, I don't think there's cash registers, right? Like, there's no food being served, but like, wait a minute, there's people mixing this stuff up, but I don't buy it here? I don't get it. I'm a little bit confused. Oh, it's a club. Well, somebody's paying for this stuff. Where does this stuff come from? How did you get behind the counter to be able to serve me? How did you get your training? What kind of other things do you have to do to learn to be able to run one of these things? What are the criteria for you to be granted a Herbalife Nutrition Club? And I think the further you go down the line, the more you realize that this doesn't really make much sense. Boy, I'm a little uncomfortable with the practices over here. Wow, you have to really do that? How many days or attempts does it take to learn how to make a shake? Like, I don't get it. So, Roger, walk us through that if you wanted to and help clarify some of those steps where those people might be thinking of whatever this might be in their mind now might understand this a little bit more. Like, this doesn't really make very much sense, and it is more or less, if you will, a front for product movement in a product-driven pyramid scheme. So do you want to help clean up whatever I said?
Roger.
Roger. Oh, I muted him out. Hold on. He was moving around. Roger, I'm sorry, I muted you out. I heard some background noise. So back to you.
Okay. So here we go. So the thing that occurred with me when I saw these green store fronts, puke green I like to call them, they stood out for one reason, that my particular district in the Bronx is not majority Hispanic, and the interesting part is the Bronx as a whole is 60% Hispanic. My particular district, while there are a lot of Hispanics, but it's not the majority. And so every business that you see, with rare exceptions, English is the governing language in my particular neighborhood. And in between, you see these little green things, and like you say, it's a closed storefront, and then people are out on the sidewalk pitching people, but all these places, only Spanish is spoken. And this makes no sense. In a neighborhood where clearly English is the governing language, and here these guys are just pitching everybody in Spanish. And if you don't speak Spanish, tough luck, they're not even talking to you. So it was really bizarre as to what is going on and what's the economic driver of this thing. And the rest is more or less like you're describing, except you do pay. If you just go in and you want to participate, you pay something to get your servings, but nominally speaking, you're paying for participating in the club, not for the product, supposedly. That's just a free extra that you get when you pay for your temporary membership, like a day pass or something like that. You get 3 consumptions with it or some such thing. And so that's how it's covered up, that it's really a covert retail operation, but it's underneath that it's a recruiting operation, because once you start consuming anything, then they will be starting to pitch you on the wonders of Herbalife, if you speak Spanish, that is. So there you go.
So in essence, they're not necessarily, there's no cash register there. It says, okay, here's $2.95 for this shake that I'm just handing you. You spend X amount of dollars, you get a shake. That's how the product is moving around. So they kind of like, well, we kind of hid that we're not a retail store, because if we're a retail store serving food, we probably have a whole bunch of things going on.
Yep, absolutely.
The people that are behind the counter, like the store has to stay open, so are they employees? Are they independent contractors? How are they being compensated? Are there any rules? Like, are they independent distributors, or are they really treated like employees? There's another whole thing going on. Are these things insured? Do they watch how the food is prepared? You'd think there's got to be some inspector involved, because it's food or not, I don't know. And then you just say, okay, so how many times do you have to show up? How do you qualify for getting one of these things? And the more you hear those answers, the more fishy it sounds and the more it looks. And you say, this is could be perceived or concocted as a great front for a product-moving pyramid scheme. Now, I just want to mention one little thing. There has been another little bit of advancement. I usually don't. I mention websites only because I want to give people credit for where credit is due. If you go to patrickpretty.com, you'll read and see something about a company called Banner's Broker, which was an advertising company, where they just had 2 people arrested over in Canada.
Yeah.
Anybody who's looked at Banner's Broker realizes that this is definitely not a right thing. But I have to share with you the YouTube video of the Canadian official who was describing what happened in the 17 or 29 minutes that he was there, probably did single-handedly a wonderful example that could be applied towards a lot of the things. So if you really want, even though he's in Canada and they don't have exactly the same rules, if you go to patrickpretty.com, they have a lot of negative stuff about MLM there. I don't think he really likes the industry. I mentioned him only because it's on his site. We're using his resources, and we wouldn't have this example available if it wasn't for him. And nobody really knows if he's a him or not. So Patrick Pretty is not him. But anyway, so if you go to watch the video on this one specific one, it is a really great example from a Canadian authority who's talking about how these things work, the predatory natures of these things. And these are the things that I think are indicative of some of the things we would want to at least let the public know about it. Now, I'm a grown person, and I could say to anybody that might be listening, listen, here's the rules, here's what's happened. Proceed with caution, but at least you're educated. So if you do well, great. If you don't do well, that's okay, too. At least you knew. I think the biggest reason why I do the Building Fortunes radio show, or one of the biggest reasons, is to educate people this is what's going on. And I think that's what... Now, this senator is really pushing, because the things that we're doing here aren't being done in the field, and too many people are being hurt, including a lot of those Spanish-speaking people who wouldn't understand anything that we just said during this whole entire radio show. So anybody else, any comments on anything related to the Herbalife thing?
And then, this is Dave. I just have one short observation about nutrition clubs. I live in a community with a significant Hispanic population, Fort Collins, Colorado. And during the school year, there are about 300,000 residents here. And to save my soul, I cannot find a nutrition club. They're not listed in the phone book. I can't find any listing online for them. They are just, if they exist, they're absolutely hidden, which makes me wonder how focused on retailing they really are.
Well, I know that part of the reason why New York is on the radar screen is because it's just like anything else. They've been infiltrated by leaders in that area, and they were the ones that kind of, through the affinity marketing of the Hispanic community, they just settled in there, and it's just probably a matter of time. So, and I know how strong the cultural influences especially in the Latino community, they do things together. I mean, they really do things together as like a family. So once it's in there, it kind of gets infected in there. And then I don't know what the number is over where you are, Roger, but I mean, like, are they, when we say they're all over the place, what does all over the place mean? Is there one on every street corner, three on every street corner?
My district is just short of 200,000 people, and I would think that there are at least 5 of these nutrition clubs. And again, I emphasize the fact that my particular district is not predominantly Hispanic. I would think it's like probably 45% Hispanic, so it's not the majority. And that was the first thing I realized about the nutrition club. How can it be that they survive if they don't even speak English? Because the majority of people passing by would speak English. And that was the first thing. One of them, which is close to me, is operating out of a single room and a hallway opening up into a dentist's office. And somehow or other they get away with it. And they painted the inside of the hallway green, and you don't see it unless the door is open and you see the puke green hallway. And then there's usually somebody on the street pitching people, but they will pick on the Hispanic because it's, like you say, once it gets in the community, and they know that I don't look like Hispanic, so they don't talk to me. And that's the strange part about it. It becomes a whole subculture onto its own.
And I think based on all the bylaws, if we had, Herbalife representatives here, they would probably be saying, like, well, there's not supposed to be some open recruiting going on. There's not supposed to be this going on. There's not supposed to be that going on. And there's a lot of these things that are going on, obviously, because a lot of people aren't following the rules. So so your prediction on the traction of the event from the senator, what will happen next?
Well, it's too early to tell how far this proposal is going to go because they're still refining it. But the bottom line is, one of the things that he's clearly after is that the company will be held responsible for the behavior of their people. That's one of the things that clearly they are on about, that, Herbalife and companies like it are routinely saying, well, we just supply these products and we are not responsible for what our distributors do, and la-di-da. And this proposal, it goes straight for the guttural in terms of making the parent companies responsible for what happens in the field. And they have to abide by these certain rules. And if not, they are immediately able to be prosecuted. So it does turn the table on a lot of the abuses that have been seen in network marketing. Like I say, one of the things I don't personally like is that they limited it to the health area, which may be the overwhelming majority of MLM, but it's not the only part of MLM.
Got it. And then, eRobert Smith, any comments you want to make?
Well, only that the clubs, once again, represent a very aggressive approach that originated out of Mexico that proved to be very profitable for Herbalife. And at first, it wasn't a company sponsored or driven situation. In other words, the nutrition clubs themselves, as I understand it, was the brainchild of a big distributor in Mexico, and it proved to be profitable for this distributor, and eventually the company learned how it was working, and I probably tacitly promoted it, but not directly, and it has proven to be a money maker for the company and for those handful of distributors that managed to get to the top. And so that's what you have. But again, the clubs themselves are not going to determine, or even the outcome of actions against these clubs aren't going to determine the future of the industry in terms of its being cleaned up. However, the clubs, because they're so brazen in terms of perpetrating a fraud, when you really analyze it, has drawn fire, and so the exposing of these clubs is once again profitable in terms of moving the ball forward and cleaning up the industry and stopping the fraud. But the clubs could go away tomorrow, and people would still be losing money wholesale. If I could use that word. And so we can just look forward to the fact that the clubs are drawing fire, and that is good for the industry, I believe. If you're looking for a future of the direct selling industry, it has to be cleaned up, and so the clubs are serving it well. They are drawing fire from regulatory authorities.
And what are the Dave? I don't know if you want to add on anything else.
I don't know that much about nutrition clubs because I can't find one. So I don't really feel qualified to speak to the issues around them.
But for those people listening in, of course, YouTube's a wonderful resource. If you go do a YouTube search for anything for nutrition clubs, you'll find the good ones, you'll find the bad ones, you'll find everything, and then you have to kind of make your own decision. I think my opinion on this is that nutrition clubs, if run the right way, could be done well. However, not everybody that has a credit card should be opening up a nutrition club. Not everybody can split the charges for a nutrition club, probably should have a nutrition club. So a company has a certain level of responsibility of kind of self-policing and managing their people. Yet left to their own devices, many times the weakest ones are the ones that may be a little bit more vulnerable towards making those decisions, and they're not capable of making those decisions. And I am the very last person on the planet that ever wants somebody to tell somebody else what they should be doing. But I am the person that probably says, you know what, at least go into this with your eyes wide open and understand all the things, and this way we can kind of prevent some people from being hurt, because there are some real victims in this scenario. And if it wasn't just, it's not just the 5 places over in Roger's section of the Bronx. There's a lot of people that are trying to earn their way up to the nutrition club. So those 5 might represent hundreds of other people that are trying to work their way up so they can eventually open up their nutrition club, and those hundreds of people probably aren't making the money that they are hoping for, but there's that dangling carrot of that guy who might be getting the overrides of hundreds of nutrition clubs all over the world, who's suggesting that this is the best way to go. So, Roger, since you started, I'll let you kick this off and we'll call it a radio show. So anything else you want to mention about Herbalife and Nutrition Clubs?
I think we've covered it amazingly well, and I will just leave it with where I started, that it's just very encouraging that there is local action, and I hope that this proposal gets refined further and improved from what it is currently, but the idea that the states are saying enough is enough, if the feds won't do it, we will, that is encouraging. The fact that local politicians were getting so many complaints that they said, I'm sick and tired of this, and they began to get into the act, now at 3 levels, city council, assemblyman, and state senator. That's quite interesting, and there have been similar developments in areas of Queens. So I'm very encouraged by it, and I just see it as just another way that society is turning up the heat on this kind of exploitation and deceit. That's
and
all.
Maybe it might influence whatever's happening on the other levels, because those other investigations, although we don't know all the details, seem to be like dragging their feet and never happening. Like,
yep.
It's just never happens. 3 years. Without this kind of pressure, it could be 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. It just kind of goes away. and then nothing ever really gets solved. And maybe Herbalife will make some changes as well. All right, guys. Well, thanks for being here, Roger. Thanks for the updates, and we will catch you next time on Building Fortunes Radio. Thanks everybody for being here.
You've been listening to Building Fortunes Radio on buildingfortunesradio.com. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check us out every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for the designated Building Fortunes Radio segment with Peter Mingils. Be sure to check out the buildingfortunesradio.com website for our featured segments. It's been our privilege to have you listen in. At Building Fortunes Radio, we wish you the success you deserve and are willing to work for. So spread the word, tell a friend, join our newsletter, and go make a difference in your world.